Did you know that one of the most beautiful cars ever built in America came from a company that doesn't even exist anymore? Nope, it wasn't a Ford, not a Cadillac, not even a Chrysler. It was a Studebaker. Yes, the same Studebaker your grandpa might have used to haul potatoes and furniture. But in 1953, they shocked the world with something so stunning, so ahead of its time, it made everything else on the road look like it was designed with a ruler and a brick. We're talking about the 1953 Studebaker Starliner Coupe, one of the most jaw-dropping cars of the decade, and one of the most frustratingly flawed. So, what went wrong? Let's dive in. In the early 1950s, American cars were big, loud, and full of chrome. Car companies were trying to outdo each other with giant tail fins, massive grills, and shiny trim that wrapped around the entire body. It was a flashy time, more about style than substance. The cars were heavy, tall, and designed to impress from a distance. Then, out of nowhere, Studebaker showed up with something that looked like it had come from the future. The 1953 Studebaker Coupe, especially the Starliner version, was nothing like the rest. It looked more like a sleek European sports car than a bulky American cruiser. People had never seen anything like it before, especially from a smaller American brand. The design came from Robert Bourke, a young talent working under the famous Raymond Loewy, who was already a legend in industrial design. Together, they created a car that didn't just follow the trends, it broke them. This Studebaker was long, low, and lean. The roofline sat lower than just about anything else on the road. The windows were narrow, and the body looked like it had been sculpted out of one smooth piece of metal. No loud chrome, no giant fins, just pure flowing lines that made the car look fast, even when it wasn't moving. The whole car looked like it was built in a wind tunnel. From the front to the back, every curve had a purpose. From the side, it looked like it was leaning forward, like it wanted to take off and fly. People were blown away. One writer said it looked like a car from 1963, not 1953. And even today, car fans agree. It still looks fresh. It's not cool for its time. It's cool, period. And what made it even more amazing? It didn't come from Detroit or Europe. It came from South Bend, Indiana, from a company most people didn't expect anything bold from. Studebaker didn't have the money or power of the big automakers, but for one shining moment, they built something better. A car that looked like it came from tomorrow. Sadly, as stunning as it looked, the story doesn't end there. Because while the 1953 Studebaker Coupe was beautiful on the outside, what was underneath told a very different story. Here's where the beautiful dream started to crack, literally. For all the praise the 1953 Studebaker Coupe earned for its futuristic looks, there was one major issue that couldn't be ignored. It didn't work very well as a car. Studebaker poured its heart and soul into the body design. The company knew it had something special, a shape that could stand toe-to-toe with the best from Italy or Detroit. But while the outside was all new and cutting edge, the inside, specifically the structure beneath that flowing body, was a different story. Instead of engineering an all-new platform to match the radical bodywork, Studebaker made a cost-cutting move. They used a modified version of their existing frame, one originally designed for shorter, narrower, less dramatic sedans. It was never meant to support the long, low, wide coupe body of the Starliner. This wasn't just a small oversight, it was a fundamental flaw. The result? The frame lacked the stiffness and support needed for the new design. When you drove over a bump or took a right turn, the chassis would twist and flex like a ruler being bent back and forth. The body panels didn't just shift, they sometimes moved independently from each other. Doors would suddenly misalign, windows stuck halfway open. The roof could warp so badly that rain would leak in, even with the windows closed. Even the hood and trunk would shift slightly, creating gaps you could see through. And then came the worst case scenario, windshields that cracked right in the showroom, just from the body flex. Can you imagine walking into a dealership, excited to drive home your brand new Studebaker, and watching the windshield split without even turning the key? That wasn't a rare case. It happened enough that dealers started bracing themselves for angry customers. And to make matters worse, not every car had the same problem. Some coupes were fine. They held together, mostly, Others were complete disasters. It depended heavily on the factory build quality, and sadly, that wasn't something you could count on in 1953. See, by this time, Studebaker was already in trouble. The post-war boom had slowed, and competition from Ford, GM, and the newly merged Chrysler Corporation was intense. Studebaker didn't have deep pockets like the big three. They were under pressure to release something impressive and do it quickly. That meant cost-cutting, rushed production, tired workers, and thin supply chains. The factories in South Bend were doing their best, but it wasn't always enough. There were reports of uneven welds, inconsistent alignment during body assembly, and parts shortages. Quality control? More of a suggestion than a guarantee. It's like trying to build a skyscraper on soft sand. You can make it look amazing, but if the foundation isn't strong, it's only a matter of time before things fall apart. Ironically, Studebaker wasn't the only company cutting corners at the time. Even major players like Ford and Chevrolet had their own quality issues, but they had the resources to fix them quickly and quietly. Studebaker didn't. When something went wrong, they had to either live with it or hope no one noticed. And customers noticed. Many who bought the 1953 Coupe loved the way it looked, but were disappointed at how it felt to drive. You couldn't push it hard, you couldn't rely on the doors or windows working the same way twice, and worse, if you got a bad one, you were stuck. There were no factory recalls or quick fixes. Owning one became a game of luck. Some buyers rolled the dice and got a smooth ride with a solid build. Others got a headache on four wheels. It was a classic case of a company reaching too far, too fast, without the tools to back it up. The 1953 Studebaker Coupe had all the style in the world, but under that skin, it was fragile, overstretched, underbuilt, and for many unlucky owners, heartbreaking. Okay, so the body was gorgeous but fragile. Maybe it made up for that with raw performance. Nope, not even close. Under the hood, buyers got a choice between a 169 cubic inch inline 6 or a 232 cubic inch V8. Now, those numbers might sound decent for 1953, but the car's styling promised so much more. It looked like a fighter jet. It drove like a mailbox on roller skates. 0 to 60? Eventually. Don't get us wrong, the V8 version was smooth and reliable, but it wasn't a sports car. It wasn't a muscle car. It wasn't even particularly fast for a cruiser. And when you're driving a car that looks like it should be eating Corvettes for lunch, it's a massive letdown. Imagine dating someone who looks like a movie star, and then realizing they've never read a book, can't cook, and always forget your birthday. That was the Studebaker Starliner. Let's rewind for a moment. Back to the man behind the metal, Robert Bourke. A name that might not ring out like Harley Earl or Giugiaro, but in design circles, it's spoken with real respect. In 1953, Robert Bourke was just 28 years old, barely older than some of the interns sketching tail fins for Detroit. Yet, he already was a leading exterior designer at Raymond Loewy Design Studio, one of the most respected industrial design firms in the world. That alone tells you something. Loewy, who designed everything from Coca-Cola vending machines to Shell logo to NASA interiors, chose Bourke to lead the exterior styling of Studebaker's most important car. And Bourke delivered a masterpiece. The 1953 Studebaker Starliner Coupe wasn't just another pretty face. It was a world-class design statement. Clean, aerodynamic, futuristic. The kind of shape that made even European designers stop and stare. It was so well proportioned, so balanced that decades later, it's still studied in design schools around the world. Even rival stylists admitted it was a work of art. The legendary Harley Earl, GM's design godfather, was reportedly rattled by how advanced the Studebaker looked. He knew Detroit had been caught sleeping, and that must have stung. But for Bourke, that moment of triumph was bittersweet, because while his design stunned the world, the car it wrapped around, well, we know how that turned out. The weak frame, the poor build quality, the cracking windshields, none of that was Bourke's fault. He designed a car that deserved a solid, modern platform, but Studebaker didn't give him one. The public didn't blame him, but the car's reputation took a hit. and sadly, so did his. In the automotive world, success is tied to the whole package, not just the way it looks. And when Studebaker's coupe began to fall apart on the road, people stopped talking about the design and started talking about the flaws. To make matters worse, instead of solving the problems, Studebaker made them worse. In 1954, they tried to update Bourke's design. The nose was shortened, the tail reshaped. The result? It lost that elegant, flowing profile. The car looked heavier, awkward. The balance was off. The 1954 version wasn't ugly, but the magic was gone. The bold vision of 1953 had been softened, compromised. By 1955, Studebaker was barely hanging on. The company had merged with Packard, but it wasn't enough. Mistakes piled up, costs ballooned, and sales kept falling. Innovation gave way to desperation, and by 1966, the last Studebaker rolled off the line. The company that once shocked the world with a space-age design was gone, and the car that could have been its savior became a cautionary tale. Still, Bourke's talent didn't disappear. In fact, his fingerprints can be found on other Studebaker designs, many of which were ahead of their time, even if they didn't achieve the same fame. One of his lesser-known but equally bold efforts was the Studebaker Lark, introduced in 1959. It was a compact car designed at a time when big was still in fashion. Bourke managed to stretch and reshape existing Studebaker parts into a fresh, smaller package that actually helped keep the company afloat for a few extra years. The Lark wasn't flashy, but it was clever, and it proved that Bourke knew how to work with limitations. There was also the Studebaker Hawk series, which took some cues from his original Starliner lines, but gave them a more aggressive, sportier edge. Though not as universally praised, the Hawks kept Studebaker somewhat relevant through the mid-50s and remain collector favorites today. Outside of Studebaker, Bourke never quite received the same recognition as some of his peers in Detroit. Maybe it was because he didn't work for GM or Ford. Maybe it was because his greatest achievement was tied to a company that failed. But among car lovers, designers, and historians, his reputation has grown over time. Today, the 1953 Studebaker Coupe is remembered not just as a flawed beauty, but as a visionary design that was let down by the world around it. And at the center of that vision was a young genius named Robert Bourke, who gave us one of the most stunning car shapes ever seen, even if the car itself couldn't quite keep up. In the end, Bourke's work reminds us that design alone can't save a car, but it can make it unforgettable. And that's exactly what the 1953 Studebaker Coupe became: unforgettable. Despite all this, the 1953 Studebaker Coupe refused to be forgotten. Why? Because even with its flaws, it mattered. It mattered to designers, to collectors, to anyone who believed that cars should be more than machines. They could be rolling works of art. Today, a well-sorted 53 Starliner or Starlight Coupe is a collector's dream. Sure, you have to baby it. Sure, you might need to reinforce the frame or track down obscure parts. But when you park it at a show, you win. You don't just turn heads, you stop people in their tracks. Even Jay Leno, who owns over 180 cars, has praised the 53 Studebaker for its sheer beauty. And Jay doesn't hand out compliments lightly. It's not just nostalgia, it's respect. Here's the real story behind the 1953 Studebaker Coupe. It's a lesson in what happens when style races ahead of substance. Design matters, absolutely. But a car isn't just a pretty face, it's a machine. And when you ignore the fundamentals, when you put all your chips on aesthetics, you risk losing it all. Studebaker shot for the stars with the 1953 Coupe, and in some ways, they made it. But they forgot to build a rocket that could actually fly. Still, would we rather have a boring, reliable box from 1953? Or a flawed, stunning time capsule that made people dream? You already know the answer. Let's be honest, the 1953 Studebaker Coupe is a heart-overhead car. It's not the fastest, it's not the most reliable, it's not the cheapest to maintain. But man, it's beautiful. And in a world full of beige sedans and soul-sucking SUVs, maybe that's enough. If you're looking for a car that will challenge you, frustrate you, test your patience, but reward you every single time you walk into the garage, this is it. It's not perfect. It never was. But maybe that's what makes it great. Would you take one home? Or would you rather admire it from a distance like a piece of art that's better left untouched? Drop a comment below and let us know what you think. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, because we've got more stories of wild, wonderful, and slightly tragic cars from the golden age of motoring coming your way. Thanks for watching, and remember, not all legends are perfect, but the best ones never are.